Okay, so we're starting the final parak, and everything we did until now was the avoda of Yom Kippur from the beginning till now was 7 prakim, and the eighth parak is about the rest of Yom Kippur, which has to do with the Chamesh Inuyim, the 5 afflictions, and also there's going to be a ganata about kapara. At the end of the Masech is going to be about the kapara and Seder of davening. So the Mishnah starts Yom Kippurim. Aser bachilu v'shtio v'rechitza v'sicha v'nilas asandal v'tash v'shamita. Yom Kippur is us to eat and drink, to wash and to anoint, like oil and other anointments. Nilas asandal to wear shoes. We'll see the details of all these halachas. And tash v'shamita means marital relations. So it seems to be 6 things over here. Rashi says that achil and shtia go together. Eating and drinking is considered one. So we're left with 5 inuyim. There's 5 afflictions. Very interesting that the pasuk doesn't say do not eat. And Yom Kippur doesn't say do not eat. There's no such mitzvah. It says afflict. It doesn't talk about eating. It talks about afflicting. And it's not a negative commandment. It's a positive commandment that says tanu es nafsho seichem. You should afflict yourselves. So just to get an idea that Yom Kippur, the issue is going to be to clarify what is that affliction. What are we talking about? So this is the Mishnah that says the 5 afflictions, and again, achil u'shtia is considered one. The Mishnah continues, issue about a king and a kala, if they're allowed to wash or not. Melech v'kala yichasu aspenayim, v'achai atinu l'sasam v'liv Rabbi Eliezer v'chacham Moshe. Machlokas over here, Rabbi Eliezer has a few leniencies. He says that a king is allowed to wash on Yom Kippur. And a kala, also, Rashi says a kala is for 30 days. The first 3 days after marriage, you'd be allowed to wash. The Rashi brings a pasuk to say that the king is supposed to be beautiful. Also, a kala is supposed to be beautiful for a husband, and the first impression of the 30 days is very important. So therefore, they'd be allowed to wash. If a kala gets married from, if a woman gets married from 10 days in Elul until 10 days in Tishrei, someplace in that area, so then she's within 30 days, she'd be allowed to wash on Yom Kippur. Achai means a woman after childbirth, tinalasa sandals. She's allowed to wear shoes, because to go barefoot would be dangerous for her. She'd catch a cold. A woman after childbirth, there could be other sick people also. So here it says that there's a heter to wear shoes. Nowadays, we don't feel the difference so much between leather shoes or other shoes. So not necessary to have this heter. But it means that if she'd have to go barefoot, if not for wearing a leather shoe, so then there'd be a heter. According to Rabbi Eliezer. All this is different.
Excuse me, I did have a question about that. When the fact that these things are called inui, doesn't that mean that does that mean that we should feel the inui, or even a comfortable shoe that we don't feel the inui? Then are we really being?
So the halacha will determine what's called a daraisa. Then, if you want to take something on a Hasidus level, then we'll see later on maybe. But even as far as the shoes, there's machlokas in the poskim, the Rishonim. What does it mean? Which shoe are you not allowed to wear? What's popular opinion is usually only leather is usher, and that could leave very many comfortable shoes. There are poskim that say, there are Rishonim that say anything comfortable, anything which supports the foot in a way that is comfortable and protective is usher. But that's very machlokas. And you want to say maybe there'd be a chasidus maybe to be careful on the other things also. So we can talk about that when we get there to the actual details. Okay. So here it has machlokas about these 3 points. But Bless has 2 leniencies, but a melech and a kala, about a king and a kala, 30 days after her marriage would be allowed to wash their faces, and a woman after childbirth would allow to wear shoes. All this is according to Rabbi Eliezer, but the Chachamim, they prohibit all these things. They prohibit a king and a kala to wash their faces. They prohibit a chaya to wear shoes. It seems here we do pass like Rabbi Eliezer, even though the Chachamim argue on both things. It seems that we do pass like Rabbi Eliezer all of these leniencies. The next part of the Mishnah talks about the shiur. How much food and drink is the amount that will make somebody chayiv paras for eating and drinking on Yom Kippur.
Rebbe.
Yes, please.
There's a very important point to Leib's question, and that is the Machlokes Rishonim. The fact that Rabbi Eliezer gives a heter is a hakra keneged the Rambam and the Ran, who say it's the Oraisa.
Manuel, you have to go with the tzibur. It's not good to bring in things that people, holding the Mishnah now. So please have patience until we get to holding with the Rambam and the Rishon. Like we have to go according to the state that we're going. Please hold on. The Mishnah continues about the shiur. Here it's talking about the shiur. How much is the amount to be chayiv? Usually we know that eating is a kazayas. Here it doesn't say kazayas because the pasuk doesn't say do not eat. Eating is a kazayas, the minimal amount of eating. Here it doesn't say not to eat. Here it says afflict oneself. So how much food is going to be considered an affliction or not? Here it says kosevas agasa. That's a date, a big date. We have to know which date that is, but it's a big date, and including the pit. The size of the date, not only the date without the pit, the size of the date, including the pit. That would be an amount of food that would give Yishuv Adas, and less than that is considered Inoy. Even though a person eats a kazayas, it might be called eating, but this is bigger than that. And even though he ate, but the Torah doesn't say do not eat. The Torah says be afflicted. He's still called afflicted until he eats this amount. And also, as far as drinking, the shir is a malo lugmav. Malo lugmav means his mouth full. Lugmav would mean cheeks full, would mean two. That the Gemara is going to say it doesn't actually mean two cheekfuls. It means one cheekful that when it's full mamish, so that's considered a malo lugmav, even though it's not two cheekfuls. So here it has to do with it. It's a subjective. It has to do with each person. The koseves is universal. Everybody, no matter how big the person is. But by drinking, it has to do with each person according to how big he is. A bigger person is not satisfied from drinking unless he has his cheek full, and a smaller person less. Here, there's no standard share. Here it goes according to each person's size.
But
So we have the
excuse
share
me,
for
isn't
eating
it?
or the share
Isn't
for
the yud and
drinking?
the yud and the vav is a plural, isn't it? So here the
Yes,
Mishnah
yes.
would imply that it means two cheekfuls at this point.
Right. I tried to
Thank
say
you.
that, and the Gemara is going to say that it means one. The Gemara continues. Mishnah continues. If you ate many kinds of foods, so that's the is chayiv. You're going to have the combination of many foods will combine to that shiur. If he has, doesn't have to be one type of food. Many types of food combine. Also many types of drinks. If you had different kinds of drinks, some water, some milk, some wine, so they all combine to the shiur of a lugmav. But if he's going to eat half a share of a koseves and drink half a share of a malo lugmav, that doesn't combine. Eating and drinking doesn't combine. So that's the halachas of the Mishnah. Just to review, the Mishnah spoke about the 5 inuyim, the 5 afflictions, machlokas Shabbalazah and the Chachamim about melech and kala washing, and a chaya where a woman after childbirth, we call the oledes. The Mishnah calls it a chaya to wear shoes. And then the question of the shiur, of how much the share of food eating and drinking is, and then the combination. So foods do combine to a share, drinks do combine to a share, but food and drink do not combine. The Gemara is very surprised that the Mishnah says it's aser b'chilu shtiya. It's only aser, it's chayv kares, it's much more than it's aser. And it should have said that it'd be chayv kares. If somebody eats or drinks any kippur, it's chayv kares. Aser, anish karesu, it's a chayv kares even. So the Gemara is going to find the case where it's only aser and not chayv kares. The rest of the things in the Mishnah, agav, rechitza, sicha, nila, sasan, the other 4 is not chayv kares. A chayv kares is only on the first 2.
What does the word also mean?
Also means you're not prohibited. You're not allowed to do it.
It doesn't say anything.
It doesn't, you're not allowed to do it. It doesn't mean that it's any punishment, but the punishment is kares. The Gemara feels that it should have said chayev or something like that. It shouldn't just say aser. Aser means that you're not allowed to do it, but it's not punishable. But this is punishable with kares. So why does it just say aser? So the Gemara is going to find a case where even though eating and drinking would be chayv kares, but is a case where it's only aser, and even that's included also. If you ate less than the share, means the Mishnah says the share is kosevas agasa and drinking is going to be malo lugmav. What if he ate less? He ate a little bit. Is that chayv kares? No, it's not chayv kares, but it's still aser. And that's the concept called chasi share. Chasi share literally means half an amount, half a measurement. It doesn't mean half a measurement. Anything less than a measurement is called a half a measurement. So even if you didn't eat the share and it's not chayv kares, but it's still going to be aser. So the Mishnah could say aser to eat, aser to drink. Sometimes it'll be chayv if you ate the right amount. Too much, but if you ate anything, it's also to eat, also to drink. But the Gemara says not so simple. Some say that you're allowed to eat less than a share of any iser, and the Gemara thinks here too. It sounds that the Gemara at this point would say that lachatchili you'd be allowed to eat less than a share. If you want to eat less than a share, less than a kazayis of chazir, less than a share of nevela, you can do all these things. The Gemara thinks don't do it yet because the Gemara is going to change right away. But so far the Gemara thinks that you'd be allowed to. So it's not aser. Because somebody holds that Chatzi Shir is mutter min Torah. The Itmar, Chatzi Shir, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Asur min Torah, Shlokish Amar mutter min Torah. So Hanich Rabbi Yochanan, El Rabbi Shlokish, Michael Meima. So only according to Rabbi Yochanan, you can say the Mishnah is coming to say that even the Chatzi Shir is Asur min Torah. You're not allowed to eat even less than a shir. But according to Rabbi Shlokish, it's mutter. So the Mishnah doesn't make sense. Either it's chayv kares, so it's mutter. The Gemara says no. Even Rabbi Shlokish holds that with Rabbanan you're not allowed to eat less than a shir. So even though till a second ago we would have thought according to Rabbi Yochanan, the Shlokish, if you want to taste chazir, you'd be allowed to eat less than a shir, less than a kazayis, or Yom Kippur, you can eat lachatchila less than a koseves. Now the Gemara says no, with Rabbanan you're not allowed to. So there still is a machlokes if it's mutter or asim b'deraisa, but with Rabbanan surely it's asim. But if that's good, we did a whole piece of Gemara. The Kasha is why to say Asa. The answer is Chasi Shir, either with the Raisa or Rabbana, but it's not Chayv Kares. Now the Gemara is going to go on a tangent to talk about this issue that now we're saying Rish Lakish agrees that with Rabbanan you're not allowed to eat a Chasi Shir. The Gemara is surprised. The Gemara said according to Rish Lakish you're allowed to eat less than a shir, and now that he told us you're not allowed to eat less than a shir, the Gemara has a problem. The Gemara goes, Iyachi, we're up to 5 lines from the bottom. Iyachi lanu chayiv alei korban shvua. We're going to go a little bit, not too long. We're going to go into the issue about making an oath, and there's a korban if someone swears falsely, and the Gemara is going to go with the concept that's called nishba l'kayim es mitzvah. That if somebody makes an oath that he's going to do something that he has to do anyway, that's called mushba omed. Hashem already swore us in by Har Sinai, by Arba Smolov. There's already a bris, and we swore that we're going to do all the mitzvahs. So if somebody made an oath that he's going to do a mitzvah, so it doesn't take effect because he's obligated anyway. And here the Gemara is going to go into a sugya a little bit, not too deep, a little bit, and the Gemara is going to try to see that Rish Lakish shows that you're allowed to eat less than a shir. Let's go into the subject. It says alama. This word alama should be alama. It's a mistake. It should be a hey at the end of the word, not an aleph. Alama. Alama tanan. Shavua shala ochal. What if somebody made an oath he's not going to eat? I swear I'm not going to eat. No, stop. I swear I'm not going to eat. But let's say on a certain day, Tuesday, whatever, I'm not going to eat. I'm ate tray for food. So, of course, you're not allowed to eat tray for food. There's a punishable for tray for food, whatever it is. The veil is allowed, whatever it might be. But did the shvua take effect? The fact that he swore that he's not going to eat, but he wasn't allowed to eat that anyway. Even without the oath, he wouldn't be allowed to swear because Hashem said don't eat nevela, treifa. So it says here, Tanakam says chayiv, that he's chayiv for the shvua also. That the shvua does take effect even though he ate nevela. Reb Shimon Poter, Reb Shimon says he's not chayiv for the shvua. Of course, he's not allowed to eat nevela treifa, but he's not chayiv for the shvua. The fact that he transgressed the shvua by eating the treifa, it doesn't transgress. That didn't transgress the shvua. Ba'avin and Bo, we had a kash over there on that Mishnah. Amai chayiv. Why is he chayiv according to Tanakama? Mushba b'amid Har Sinai. He's already sworn in. And Har Sinai, he made a shvua that he's not going to eat nevela treifa. So now that he made another shvua that he's not going to eat, why does it take effect? We know Rashi brings down the gedin of nishba l'kayim es mitzvah. If you have here on the second white line in Rashi, nishba l'kayim es mitzvah v'lo kiyim poter, because he's already sworn in. So that's the most kasha. How could the Tanakama say that he's chayiv for eating the nevela treifa, for the shvua that he's eating the nevela treifa? It shouldn't have taken effect because anyway he's not allowed to eat it. So we have a couple of twists on this kasha. Rav Ushmul, Rabbi Yochanan Damri b'kolel dvorim hamutorim dvorim ha'asurim. One teretz is kolel. What does kolel mean? Inclusive. So if he would have just sworn, I swear I'm not going to eat treifa, so then you're right. Then it doesn't take effect because he's anyway not allowed to eat it. But here the case was, he said shvua shelo ochal. He said in general, I'm not going to eat anything. So that included he's not allowed to eat anything, not even kosher food. So then it takes effect on the kosher food, and since it takes effect on the kosher food, it takes effect on the treifa food also because it was more inclusive. That's called kolel. Kolel means inclusive. So that's the first teretz. That even though Mushba Vomid Mar Sinai, Nishba l'kayim es mitzvah does not take effect, but here that the shvua included more than the chiyuv, that's why it takes effect. It takes effect even on the Isser also. Not only does it take effect on the heter, it takes effect even on the food that you're not allowed to eat because the shvua took effect. That was one teretz. That doesn't get to our subject yet. But now Rish Lakish Amar, yet the motzi ela b'mefarish chasisheh liba d'Rabbanan o b'stam v'liba d'Rabbi Akiva. The Amar Adam Oser Asma b'kol shilu. Rish Lakish is another teretz. Let's point out it's Rish Lakish again. We're talking Rish Lakish is the one we're looking for. Rish Lakish is the one who said Chatzi Shem with the Torah, and we want to know if he holds that as Asam Rabbanan or not. But Rish Lakish says I have another eitzah. Another eitzah how to say that it should be chayiv for the shvua of eating treifa, because eating the treifa, let's say nevela treifa, shkatzim rumasim was only kazayis. What's the issa deraisa to eat treifa? A kazayis, less than a kazayis, no issa. And in the shvua, if the shvua is going to make him also to eat treifa even less than a kazayis, so he did something. He accomplished something. The shvua accomplished something. If he would have said, I'm not going to eat a kazayis from the vela, he didn't do anything because with the rice, not allowed to eat it either. His shvua didn't add anything on. But if his shvua made more severity than the Torah did, so he added on something. So the Torah says, don't eat a kazayis. And now he said, I swear I'm not going to eat even less than a kazayis. So that's how it takes effect. What he throws in there about Rabbi Akiva and Rabbanan, that's a question about by shvua. When a person says a shvua, I'm not going to eat, does that only include a kazayis? As far as the assume of the Torah, not allowed to eat the vela tray for all these things, chazir, people, so it's a kazayis. How about if someone says, I swear I'm not going to eat? Is he allowed? Does that make a kazayis or less than a kazayis? So that's machlokes. The Rabbanan say that whenever you say I'm not going to eat, it means a kazayis. But if he's mafarish, if he says explicitly, I swear I'm not going to eat even less than a kazayis, so then it take effect even on the Yisurim, because the Nevei, they weren't allowed to eat only a kazai, so now you're not allowed even less. Rabbi Akiva holds that every shvua, whenever you say a shvua, stam al Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says the other most asma b'chol shvua. Rabbi Akiva says when a person swears, I'm not going to eat, he doesn't mean a kazai. He means not going to eat anything. And this is Shloksh's teretz, very nice teretz, that even though if he would have made a shvua on something which is already usher with the raisa, he didn't do anything because it takes effect anyway. But if he added on more to the issa, because now he made it usher even less than a shear, so he did something, he accomplished something, and therefore the shvua takes effect. Now the Gemara is opening up the subject. Rash Lakish, Midrabanan, is he allowed to eat it? The Nevel and Treifa. You say that less than a shear would have been mutter, and now his shvua made it usher. So he did with the shvua more than the Torah did. But if the Rabbanan said you're not allowed to eat it, if you agree that with Rabbanan you're not allowed to eat the Nevel less than a kazayas, so you didn't add anything more with your shvua because you weren't allowed to eat it anyway. You're true, not on the Raisa level, but on the Rabbanan level you weren't allowed to eat it. So you didn't add anything with your shvua anyway. Second line, that's the most conscious. That's the most conscious under Shlakish. We thought the Shlakish shows that Chatzi Shir is mutter. So then it makes sense what he said over here, that Chatzi Shir of Nevela would have been mutter, and now with the shvua he made it asa. But if you give in, you agree that Chatzi Shir is asa with Rabbanan, so you didn't add anything with your shvua because you still weren't allowed to eat it. But the Gemara, of course, is going to entertain the possibility that midaraisa you are allowed to eat it. But Rabbanan, you're not allowed to eat it. But with the rice, you were allowed to eat. Maybe that's enough to make that the shvua is the rice. So maybe till now it was only Asam Rabbanan, and now he made it Asam with the rice. Maybe that's enough to be considered that he added on something to the deraisa. That's what the Gemara is going to entertain. Second line, maybe the fact that the Torah is allowed to eat it, so that shvua does take effect because now it became Asam with the rice. Till now it's only Asam with Rabbanan. So the Gemara has a kasha to show that no, that if something is Asam on the Rabbanan level, it already makes it that the shvua doesn't take effect because it's Asar B'Rabbanan. But shvua say this. This now we're going another subject about shvua. There's a parsha called shvua seidus. That means there's a parsha. Is that okay? There's an issue called shvua seidus. Shvua seidus means that a person, if he knows testimony for somebody, he has to say testimony. You're have to say testimony for somebody if you could help him out. You saw somebody steal, you saw somebody borrow money, and then there's a denial. So if you know testimony, you have to come. The Torah talks about that the person swears, I don't know testimony. The person who needed him said, testify for me. He says, I swear I don't know testimony. And then he really did. He really did know testimony, and he gives in, he says afterwards, I lied. So he has to bring a korban for a lying. That he could have helped somebody with this. And he made a shvua, he made a false shvua. He made an oath that I don't know testimony, really he did. So that's called Shvua Seidus. There's a whole parak. One is about Shvua Splitu, one is Shvua Seidus. So now we're going into Shvua Seidus. So it says Shvua Seidus only applies to somebody who was kosher to be an aid. If he wasn't kosher to be an aid, he swore, I swore I don't testimony. Anyway, even if he would have said that testimony, person would listen to him. So then there's not chayt because he didn't do anything.
He's a gambler. Like he's a gambler.
Oh, you're jumping, but it's a good jump. It's a good jump. Yeah, it's a good jump. You didn't mean to jump, but you jumped. But it's a good jump. The Gemara is going to say right away, the Mishnah over there says women are pater from Shvua Seidus, relatives are puzzle from Shvua Seidus. What else does it say? And apostle Leidus is apostle Leidus, people that are apostle. Right. So then the Mishnah says, this Mishnah, Shvua Seidus, and Hegesel B'Ruin L'Hoyed. So the Gemara says, we said everything already. We said already, Nashim, Krovim, and Psulim, that those are the people that are not Roy L'Hoyed. They can't say testimony because either woman's puzzle for testimony or relatives or people that are puzzle, or Ghana, whatever it might be. So why does the Mishnah can say again that Shvua Seidus only applies to those that are fitting to testify? We said already, we already excluded everybody, women, relatives, and puzzle. Papa says it's coming to exclude a king. A king is not allowed to say testimony. There was a special reason for that. There's a Sanhedrin that we don't want a king to testify, and the Gemara over there talks about why they made such a takana. But that's not the game to us right now. This is what Chaim David said, a gambler, that he's a gambler, so he's supposed to lay this. So if he swore, I don't know testimony, and then later on he admits I did know testimony, it doesn't make a difference, because anyway, it wouldn't have been accepted to testify anyway. Why does the Gemara want with that? The gambler is only possible with Rabbanan. Rashi says that he's not a real Ghana, he's not a mamish Ghana. Maybe Rashi doesn't talk about it, maybe because Asmachta Kanya, low Kanya, the gambler, what's wrong with a gambler? Why is a gambler supposed to lay this? If he wins, if he loses, he's not supposed to lay this. He's a gambler who wins because the money that he took, he's not supposed to take. Because the person who lost didn't mean to lose. So
Be a
that's
loser
called.
if you're a gambler.
If you're a losing gambler,
If you're
you
a
could
loser,
be, you could be still cautious. If you wins, but anyway, this whole psul of Masach Bekuvia, Kuvia means cubes. Kuvia is cubes, means dice, playing dice, gambling. That doesn't mean whatever. So the gambler is also midrabanan. So what does the Gemara see? That he's puzzled midrabanan, and still the shvua that he swore doesn't take effect even with the raisa. Means you don't say with the raisa he's roy leidus. So since he swore that I'm not going to testify, so on the raisa level the shvua did take effect, and since he's lying, he should have to make him bring a shvua, korban shvua. You don't say that. You say that since midrabanan he's disqualified to say edus, so the shvua does not take effect. So you see that the Rabbanan to us is as significant as a Daraisa. Just like over there by Rabbanan. The fact that Rabbanan he can't say testimony, he's not called Roy Leidus, and even on the Daraisa level, he's not Chayiv Shvuas Eidus. So over here, if you say the Chassi Shir is Aser Rabbanan, also we should say that he didn't add anything more by saying, I swear I'm not going to eat this Nevela. Anyway, we weren't allowed to eat it. Even a Chassi Shir, you weren't allowed to eat on the Rabbanan level. The Gemara is trying to show that the Rabbanan level is as significant as Daraisa, as you see by Shvuas Eidus. So the Gemara wants to prove from this that Rish Lakish must hold that Chatzi Sheh is mutter, not only not mutter min Torah, it's mutter even with Rabbanan. The Gemara says a very lumdish atera. It's very, very easy and very lumdish. Shani Yasam Damar Kroim Lo Yagid. The pasuk over there says that he's chayv because he doesn't say the testimony. V'hai la baragadu klal. He can't say testimony. The Gemara is saying a beautiful teretz that by testimony over there we don't care why he can't say testimony. If Lamaisa Bess is not going to listen to him, so he's not roy lahoyed. Over there, the point is where the guy made his money. If he would have testified for him, would have been able to help him out. So if Bezdin wouldn't have accepted your testimony, what the reason is? The Rai said, Rabban Lamaisa, you couldn't get into Bezdin. Maybe, I'm not sure if I'm saying a good example, but let's say that Bezdin would have been locked. It would have been a stormy day. You wouldn't have been able to get there. I'm not sure. I don't mean to say Allah Lamaisa. But even if there's a technicality that would have held you back, you wouldn't be able to say Edus. Also, his shvur say this wasn't worth anything. He said, I swear I don't know testimony. And if you do know testimony, he's in quarantine. Let's say a modern kind of example. He's in quarantine because of Corona. And he swears I don't know testimony. If he would have known testimony, it wouldn't have helped anything anyway, because he couldn't come to Bezdin to testify anyway. So that's also not Chayiv Shvur say this, because over there it has to be Lamaisa. Would you have been able to help him? So here, over there, the Gemara says, we don't care if it's the Rais of Rabbanan. But otherwise, by as far as Chatzi Shem and Torah, if he only would have been asked to eat the Chatzi Shem with the Rabbanan, and now he made a Shvur that I'm not going to eat a Chatzi Shem, so he did do something. He made it now that it's Issa the Raisa. So therefore, he would be Chayiv for the Shvur does take effect. That's the end of the sugya about Shvur. Just to sum it up, the Gemara had one kasha so far. How come the Mishnah says Asr to eat at Yom Kippur? It's Chayiv Koros. The Gemara answered Chatzi Shir, that it's true that it's Chayiv Koros if you eat a Shir, Koseves, and drink a Malol Dugmuk, but you're not allowed to even eat less. The Gemara brought up to Machlokes, Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, if that's true or not. Rabbi Yochanan says you're not allowed to eat Chatzi Shem and Torah. Rabbi Yochanan, Rish Lakish says you are allowed to. But the Gemara says even Rish Lakish also agrees that Rabbanan you're not allowed to, and that's also that's why he says Asr. When the Mishnah says you're not allowed to eat on Yom Kippur, you're not allowed to drink on Yom Kippur, why does it say you're not allowed to? It should have said Chayiv Koros, because the Chatzi Shir, even though it's not Chayiv, it's still Asr. Asr the Raisa, Asr Rabbanan, but it's Asr. And then the Gemara
Chayiv Malchus.
Chayiv Koros. We talk about Chayiv Koros.
No, but let's just say it's a sur.
So it's not. I don't. Chayiv Koros is saying according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's Asr Min Torah, maybe it's Chayiv Malchus. It could be.
As opposed to Koros.
I could. True.
It's a lot.
Good.
It
So
should
yeah.
be eaten.
Good. Chaim Tav Zachor right that it would be Chayiv Malchus. I didn't think about it. The Chayiv be Chayiv Malchus according to Rabbi Yochanan, but I didn't think about it. So I'm just saying it in the name of Chaim Tav. And so what we just say, the reason why the Mishnah says Asr to eat and drink on Yom Kippur, even when it's not Chayiv Koros, it's still Asr. Is it Asr with the Rais of Rabbanan? Machlokes of Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish, but it's Asr. The Gemara had a problem just to clear up this Gemara that Rish Lakish himself says that he's not Chayiv for Shvuas Eidus if he was Masach Bekuvya. I mean, everyone agrees to that. Even a soldier Rabbanan, that's because they wouldn't accept him into Bezdin, because they wouldn't have accepted his testimony. So they didn't mazik anything by not saying testimony. But if someone had a Issa Rabbanan not to eat less than a shear, Nevela Treifa, and now he made a shvur, I'm not going to eat less than a shear, so then it does take effect because now he made an Issa Daraisa. The Gemara just cleared that up in order to allow this point. We said that according to Rish Lakish, a Chatzi Shir is Asr Rabbanan. The Gemara is going to continue soon about this machlokes Chatzi Shir Asr Torah or not, but before that, the Gemara goes back to the Mishnah. The Gemara is opening up the subject now. The kasha wasn't a kasha in the first place. What was our first kasha? It says Asr. Why does it say Asr to eat and drink? It's keeping Chayiv Koros. And the Gemara made a kasha out of that it shouldn't have said Asr if it's really Chayiv Koros. But the Gemara is not impressed. The word Tani. The Onish Koros, Latani Asr. Like, what's the kasha in the first place? Just because it says usher, it means not chayv kares. Sometimes it's going to say usher, even though it's chayv kares. Right now, we're telling you that you're not allowed to. You want to have chayv kares, it could be chayv kares. I want to tell you you're not allowed to do it. So the Gemara is not so impressed with the kasha in the first place. Just because it's chayv kares, it's not going to say usher. It could say usher, even though it's chayv kares. But Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, afapisha amru usher v'kulan. Even though it says asa on all of them, everything's asa. Achila, shtia, pizza, sicha, nilas, asandal, tash, everything's asa. But chiv kares is only on eating and drinking and doing malacha on Yom Kippur. But it says fairish over here that they're all asa, even though chiv kares is only on eating and drinking. And you make it sound like you can't say asa on eating and drinking because you have to say chiv kares. The word asa doesn't apply. Here, see, it does apply. So the Gemara says no. The Brisa also means what we're talking about. Achi kama kishamu asa amu ela b'chasi shir. First, stick that into the brisa that to say that it's asur to eat and drink, you have to talk about chatzi shir, less than the shir, because if it's a shir, it's chayv kares. You don't say the word asur, you say chayv kares. So that's first in the brisa. Stick it, insert it into the brisa that the iser is only going to apply when it's less than the shir. If it's a shir, it's even chayv kares. And then the brisa continues. Afish anush kares and anush kares alochol b'shosev osam alocha b'obad. Even the chayv kares of eating a shir is only eating and drinking. But by the rest of them, rechitza sicha is not going to be kares. So the Gemara still upholds the kasha and the teretz. The kasha was a good kasha. You don't say the word asr if it's chayv kares, and we still hold on to the teretz that here it says asr because it's less than a shir. Either so therefore it's asr madaraisa or madabanan. But if it will be chayv kares, I wouldn't say asr. Iba yisema. The first one of the line is iba yisema. Another teretz to the kasha. The kasha will want to say asr if it's chayv kares. The reason why it says us is because the rest of them, like the rest of is saying, that the rest of them, are only asr and not chayv kares. That's why it says asr. And then the reason, if it would have just said achil shtia, it wouldn't have said asr. It would have said chayv. But since it has to say the rest of them are only asr, so it says asr. The Tanu Rabba of Rabbi Yosef b'Shar Sifrei Devei Rav v'Nam Yom Kippurim Shasur B'Chitza B'Sicha V'Nilas Asam V'Shamita Tamulam Shabbason. It says this word Shabbason. B'Darshin Shvos. Shvos means to stop. Like Shvita means a strike. Shabbos means to stop. So by Shabbos, by Yom Kippur it says Shabbason, and the word dashing it here means as far as all kinds of stops, not just stopping from eating, also to stop all these other kinds of enjoyments, which are washing and anointing, wearing shoes, marital relations. Everything stopped, but that's only going to be a mitzvah saseh, Shabboson. It's not going to be chayv kares. Chayv kares is only going to be on tanuas nafsho seichem, and the main inui, the main affliction we're going to see means eating and drinking, which is going to be later on. Today's daf is going to talk about how do we know that the inui means eating and drinking. So we finished the first sugya. What was it? Why does it say asr if it's really chayv kares? The answer to one of two answers. Either even in a case where there's no kares by eating and drinking, if it be less than a shir, it's still going to be asr, either the rice or the rabbanan. Or another teretz would be that the reason why it says asr is because of the rest of the Mishnah about washing and anointing, wearing shoes and relations. That's asr, and it's not chayv kares. That's why it says asr. But in Echanami, eating and drinking is chayv kares.
What's that shar mean?
On the rest of the Mishnah, shar, the rest of it, the other four things, the other four inuim over there is only asr, and it's not chayv kares. If that's good, we go on to the next Gemara. And now we're opening up a window on, I don't know why this is green over here. I don't know what happened over there. Okay. The Gemara continues. We're opening up a window about the Chatzi She'asim in Torah now. So far we had Machlokas, Rabbi Yochanan says Chatzi She'asim in Torah, that even with the rice you're not allowed to eat less than a shear. Maybe it's Chayv Malchus, like Chaim David said. And Rish Lakish said that it's only Asim and Rabbanan. Gufa, we learned before, Chatzi She'asim Rabbi Yochanan Asim in Torah, Rish Lakish Am Mutim in Torah. Machlokes if it's also the rice or not. The Gemara is not going to go into the Rabbanan. We said already it's also the Rabbanan, but now the Gemara is going to open up the subject: is it also the rice or not? That Lamaisa, you see, if you eat the amount that should be a shear, it will be chayv. That means each piece is called iser. You can't say he's not eating iser; he's eating iser. The fact that a lot of this bits would add up to a kazayas or here a kosevas, so it's iser. So he's eating iser. Chazilas the roof means that it's fitting to combine to a big share. So therefore, he's eating iser. The substance is iser. Why? The Torah says don't eat. Here it doesn't say don't eat. Here it says tanu. Whatever the point is, that it's only when it's considered eating. Over there, eating here considered affliction, not being afflicted. But even if the thing is a piece of iser, it doesn't make a difference to us because with the rice he didn't eat. So that's the machlokes. The first the Gemara said a machlokes in Svara. Now the Gemara brings that there's a pasuk about it. It says in the Torah. It says in the brisa, over there, it's talking about the Isra of eating chaylev. Chaylev means fats that you're not allowed to eat certain fats from an animal. It's only also by a behema, not by a chaya. It means that the behema means a cow, a sheep, and a goat. You're not allowed to eat the chaylev, and that's what they have nowadays. The nikor, that they clean out nikor chaylev, they take out all the fats that are rasa. The butcher is supposed to do that, or in the slaughterhouse, and by a chaya it'd be mutter. Chaylev chaya is mutter. It means if you get a deer, most people don't eat deer, but if you get a deer, so then you would allowed to eat the chaylev. There's no issa chaylev on a chaya, only on behema. And the pasuk says over there, do not eat chaylev, because if someone eats chaylev, it's chayiv kares. It goes in one pasuk. Don't eat any chaylev, because anybody that eats chaylev is going to be chayiv kares. So the Brisa says, the pasuk puts it together. Don't eat, because if you eat, it's chayiv kares. So it goes like a package deal. Don't eat, and if someone eats, it's chayiv kares. That sounds like the issa is only on whatever's chayiv kares. I only see that the thing which is chayiv kares is punishable. That's the thing which is prohibited. How about something which is not punishable? Is it also prohibited? Do you have anything which is prohibited, even though it's not punishable? Koi. This word is koi. That's an animal which is questionable what it is. If anybody has what to say about it, they talk about maybe a buffalo, or they talk about, I'm not sure if that's the question. They talk about a coarse breed also, it might be a coarse breed, but it's a question that the Gemara presents it as being a suffix if it's a behema or a chaya. It means we have, in all of the animals, we divided them into domestic animal and a wild animal. Usually we divide it between the cow, sheep, and the goat are the behema, and the deer is the chaya. A koi is something in between.
And it's kosher?
It's kosher. How about if you eat a chaylev? So the chaylev of a behema is aser. The chaylev of a chaya is mutter. How about a koi? Also chatzi shir. This is mamash our subject. Chatzi shir. If you ate less than a shir of chaylev, so it's not chayiv kares. So you might think that since it's not chayiv kares, maybe it's not aser either. However, since it's not included in the punishment, yochel eno basar, maybe it's not even aser. Tamad lama kol chaylev. It says, Rashi means on the pasuk over here. Where's the pasuk? Kol chaylev. I'm sorry about that. I try to highlight it. I don't see the highlighting business over here. But Kol chaylev. Okay, I'm sorry that I can't show it. Kol chaylev shor v'ches. Well, I'm highlighting too much. Kol chaylev shor v'ches v'eis lo so chaylev. And then the pasuk continues. Ki kol chaylev v'nabehema v'nichrasa. Don't eat any chaylev shor v'ches v'eis, because if somebody does, it's chayiv kares. So now the Gemara goes that these things, a koi or chatzi shir, is not chayiv kares. You might think that it's not aser either. No, it says kol chaylev. Kol chaylev shor v'ches v'eis lo so chaylev. Don't eat any chaylev. So the pasuk kol, it could have said chaylev. Chaylev shor v'ches v'eis lo so chaylev. Why does it say kol chaylev? That kol chaylev, any kind of chaylev, is going to be marked with these things also. That even a koi, it's the chaylev of a koi is aser to eat, and the chaylev of a chatzi shir is aser to eat. So Rabbi Yochanan says, Rish Lakish, the Brisa says the pasuk kol chaylev is coming to be marked that you're not allowed to eat a chatzi shir. It says the Brisa. So how could he say that it's only the Rabbanan? Rish Lakish is a big kasha. Rish Lakish says big shoulders, but Rabbanan across mach the valma. The pasuk, it brings a pasuk, but it's only a remez. It doesn't really mean that this is the source. Kol chaylev is for something else, and he doesn't tell us, but he says that that's not the right. It's only lasmachta, means it's sinumanic. Let's say it's coming to us a remez. It's not coming to really have a drasha. It's not a real drasha. So Rish Lakish still keeps to his teretz, to his shita, that chatzi shir is muter min haTorah. He's masking the sasam rabbanan. Here he says again the sasam rabbanan. Here he says befirish. But Rabbi Yochanan says sasam b'deraisa, like the pasuk found in the brisa, kol chaylev. Any chaylev don't eat, even less than a shir.
Of this animal, of what? Of all animals, even of a.
We're talking about two subjects, koi and a chatzi shir. We're in a chatzi shir.
Right.
Chatzi shir, the Brisa says here that kol chaylev is coming to be marba, even a chatzi shir is aser. Sounds like it's the Raisa. Rish Lakish says not only rabbanan, it's across mach the balma. It's only a remez, but it doesn't mean to make a real drasha. So a chatzi shir is rabbanan. So we still back to what we started.
What is
He doesn't say. He doesn't say what he dashed with the pasuk. He doesn't say. But machlokes still remains. If a chatzi shir is aser min haTorah, here we have a pasuk before the Gemara said chazilas tarufe. Here the Gemara says that is a pasuk of kol chaylev. Rish Lakish wants to back himself up. He wants to prove he's not only going to just defense. He wants to show that this Brisa is only rabbanan. It's also more reasonable the way I'm saying that it's only rabbanan. If the Brisa means serious, it's a real drasha. Koi sveikahu is a sveika. The pasuk says that a koi is not going to be chayiv kares, but it's aser. Are you going to say that it's a suffix? What's the question over here? Is a koi, the two choices only, either it's a chaya or behema. The Torah knows, means we don't know maybe, but the Torah knows what it is. And here the Torah is coming to tell us the din of a koi. So either it's telling us that it's a behema or it's a chaya. But here it says neither. It says that it's also to eat it, but it's not chayv kares. If it's a chaya, it's mutter to eat. If it's a behema, it's chayv kares. So how could you take the pasuk literally, the Raisa literally, say that as the Raisa? If it's the Raisa, then it wouldn't make sense. By Chatzi Shir, you could say it's as the Raisa. The pasuk says Chatzi Shir, but the Raisa is also without kares. But a koi, it's only one or two choices. Either it's a behema or it's a chaya. So the Torah can't tell us that it's asr, but it's not kares. If it's a behema, then it's chayv kares. If it's chaya, then it's mutter. So it must be that's only a smachta midrabanan. It's a kol asui is faker. You need a pasuk to say what the din of a suffix is. The Torah will tell you what the din of the suffix is and tell you that it's not a suffix. Either it's a behema and it's asr chayv kares, or it's no, we're going about koi.
Oh, koi. Now we have the koi.
He wants to bring a right from koi that the Raisa must mean only with Rabbanan. Because if it would be the Raisa, it wouldn't make sense that the Torah is saying that the chaylev of a koi is aser with the Raisa and it's not chayv kares. If it's a behema, it should be chayv kares. If it's a chay, it should be mutter. It must be, it's only Rabbanan. The Gemara is not impressed. That bottom line. Imishim holo area. If this is the whole raya, it's not a proof. Area sounds like raya, it's not a raya. Because Savri, koi, top line. It isn't so simple that a koi is just a suffix. Till now I presented it as being a suffix chai, suffix behema. There's another choice. It could be it's a new thing by itself. It's not a chai, it's not a behema. It's a new min. And this new bria, the Torah says that you're not allowed to eat the chayla, but it's not chayv kares. And I'll prove to you. And I'm going to prove to you that a koi is a bear b'fnatzma. Till now we thought that a koi is we don't know, but it's either one of the two. Now I'm going to prove that it's something else. It's a third category. If you're not going to say that, you're going to say that it's only one of the two, a chai or behema. Hadam ravi de bar oven. Rashi says this is talking about the Isra of blood. We're transferring now not the Isra of Chayla, but the Isra of blood. It says Brisa, or I'm sorry, Vida Barovin, Afkol Lasuye Koi. That there's a drasha to say that Koi is also associated to eat the blood. But by blood is different than Chayla. Blood, you're not allowed to eat the blood of a Chaya, you're not allowed to eat the blood of a Behema. Right. So then there's you don't need a pasuk for that. You don't need a drasha to say that you're not allowed to eat the blood of a Koi. Of course you're not allowed to. If the only suffix would be, is it a chai or behema? So for sure you're not allowed to eat the blood. Why the chaylev? I'd have a question because chaylev of a chai is mutter, chaylev of a behema is asa. So what's the din of a koi? So there's a valid question. But by blood, there's no question because both the blood of a chaya, you're not allowed to eat the blood of a deer or of an animal, of a behema. So why do you need a pasuk? It must be it's called a sweet faker. Here the kasha is going to be because both of them are asa. It must be that it's a berry. It's not one of the other. It's a third category. So therefore, we could go back to say that a koi, that Isra of koi is really Isra the Raisa. So Rish Lakish had no hachinami mistabra. We still remain the way we started. That machlokes of Yochanan and Rish Lakish if chatzi she'asim in the Torah or not. We had a kasha on Rish Lakish that here says a pasuk. He says only in asmachta. He wanted to back up his terrorist to say it's only in asmachta by showing that koi must be in asmachta. That the Gemara disproved. It could be that it's not asmachta. Could be it's really serious that a koi is also in the Raisa. And the reason why it's not chayv kares is because it's not a chaya or a behema. It's a bear b'fnei asma. As you see by blood.
Asmachta is weaker than.
Asmachta is not the Raisa. Asmachta is a remez or a pneumonic. It's not the Raisa at all.
It can only be the Rabban.
That's what Rish Lakish says. So we finished that sugya. That sugya is all finished.
I know blood. I don't see anything about blood.
You have to look in Rashi.
Oh.
Rashi says Mikrisos. Everybody knows Vida Barov Mikrisos Perakdam Shchita Daf Chaf Aleph Avkol Lasuye Koi. Tiktani Yasam Kol Dam Lo Sochelu, and it tells you that a koi also not allowed to eat the blood, and that the Gemara proves that it must be a bear b'fnei asma, or else you wouldn't need a pasuk because you're not allowed to eat the blood neither of a chai or behema. If that's good, so we continue. New sugya altogether. New sugya. If anything didn't make sense until now, we can start afresh because now it's a new sugya. And now the sugya starts. How do you know that inui means not to eat? It says inui. The Torah doesn't say don't eat. The Torah says afflict yourselves. Tanu is not sure sechem. So
eat salt.
Chaim David says to eat salt.
Oh, eat no. Fried.
Okay, something else called an affliction. The Gemara is going to say something else, but also the same idea. The Gemara is going to suggest maybe other kinds of. Who says that it means to eat? So you could say that we have a Masorah since Sinai, which is true, but the Gemara is going to find it in the Pesukim. Tan Rabbanan. Tanu is not sure sechem. It says you should afflict yourselves. Maybe sit in the hot, sit in the sun. That's called an affliction. Sit on Yom Kippur, sit in the sun, or sit in the cold. That'll be the affliction. Chaim David said to eat salt also, but the point is that maybe a different kind of affliction. The Gemara is going to talk about hot and cold. Maybe that's called affliction. No, Right next to the mitzvah of affliction, it says also not to do malacha. And there's going to be a comparison. We're going to compare the two, that the affliction is going to be something similar to malacha. It has to be something passive. So to eat salt, let's say, or to go to sit into the sun, go sit into the cold, that's called something active. It has to be something which is passive. That malacha, the Torah says, don't do malacha, means sit back, don't do malacha. So too, affliction is going to be sit back and don't take care of yourself in a way that you should be afflicted. It has to be passive, not active. Okay, so it's not going to be to go into the cold, go into the hot. The Gemara says, the gears here it could be better. It is a better gears, but I'll just read it not to make confusion. But the lo name aleikum tov betula, yaseh betula v'korele lo name aleikum tov b'shimsha. The Gemara says, okay, I'll get up shot for you that's going to be passive. That if somebody's really sitting in the sun, he's not allowed to get up. Maybe if you're not in the sun, you don't have to go out of your house to sit in the sun because only passive. But if you're sitting in the sun, you're not
over the mountain.
So you're not allowed to leave. And if it's cold, you're not allowed to leave. Maybe you will keep to what you want, that it should be a passive affliction, but maybe an economy. Passive. If it happens to be passive, you'll be a passive affliction. But maybe it doesn't mean that the dafki not dafki eating. But the Gemara says also it has to be similar to malacha. Dumya du malacha. We said that it goes next to malacha. It says Tanus nafshasechem b'chol malacha lo sasu. It has to be universal. It means if you're going to say that it's only if you happen to be in the sun, happen to be in the cold, so some people will be afflicted, some people will not. But when the Torah says don't do malacha, it's universal, it applies to everybody. So it has to be a universal passive affliction. That's how I
sure, because maybe lives in Sweden and there's no sun in this time of year. It's
no, that wouldn't bother the Gemara only because it is. The Gemara says if it was
they have to be 5.
No. So the Gemara suggested that maybe that's only you're going after the terrorists. If the Gemara said, if you happen to be in a situation where it's afflicting, so stay there. So, and if you're not. So the Gemara has to answer, no. According to the Gemara's Havamina, then if you happen to be in a comfortable situation, so you can stay there. You go before Yom Kippur into a air conditioned, the right temperature control place, and then you're okay. But the Gemara says no, because since the pasuk says next to malacha, so malacha is universal, applies to everybody. So also the Inu has to apply to everybody. Everybody has to be afflicted. And if it's going to be that somebody who's in a comfortable situation is not afflicted, the pasuk didn't get fulfilled. It has to be universal, passive affliction. So therefore, it's going to be not eating and not drinking. That's called universal. Yes.
Nafkamina Latina that the Chashukei Hamed brings up is, would it be mutter, like they have these things out now called som kal? Would it be mutter to take a chomer that would be makel, the inui, from you? And the answer is yes. Because you're doing it beforehand.
I'm not. Yeah, okay. I'm not sure what you see in the Gemara here. I'm not sure what the proof is. If you're, I don't see why it has to do with the point of the Gemara. The Gemara says that the Isser is to eat a universal passive affliction.
Right, but the pashtus of the Gemara here is nogea to the inyan of what about if a person's kind of actively avoiding inui, and in terms of taking a chomer like some kal or something, that's not in the getter of breaking the inui, because inui is defined here with an aseh and a lav. And the love happens to be strictly defined as these 5 things, and there's a getter for it. And that would be mutter.
I have to talk to you again about it. I didn't get it, but I'd like to talk to you afterwards. The Gemara continues. Tan Ida. So far we finished the first drasha. The first drasha was, how do you know that it means eating and drinking? Because it has to be universal, passive. Next brisa. Tanus nafshasechem. The same kasha, we're looking for the same thing. Maybe the issue is going to be, maybe the way to afflict himself is to go into the hot and cold. Again, it's going to be something similar to malacha, but here it's going to be a different aspect. It has to be something which we find such a concept of this issue. Means to go into the cold and the hot, you don't find in the whole Torah such a thing. There's no such thing as in the Torah going into the hot and cold. No such thing. So we're not going to say that the Torah here means to do something which we never spoke about. But it's going to be something just like malacha. That's what Rashi says, that the malacha, we say don't do malacha on Yom Kippur. We find the concept like by Shabbos, and I'll not do malacha on Shabbos. I was saying don't do malacha on Yom Kippur. So it's also the inui that we're talking about is going to be something that we find a similar concept. We've had it already someplace else in the Torah. And the Gemara now, I'll just give a little introduction because the Gemara goes on pretty long, but it's not hard, but it goes on for pretty much now. And just to get the concept what the Gemara is going to try to find. The Gemara is going to say that the affliction is going to be not to do something which the Torah says in other places not to do. And what is that? Eating. The Torah says another place is not to eat. Does the Torah say any place to fast? There's not a place where the Torah says to fast. This is the only place.
So these are all the laws. I was looking at each one. Don't wear this, don't wear that, don't touch Shemitah, don't. It's all done.
I'm not following.
It's all done.
That's not the
Don't eat,
point.
don't drink.
I'm not sure what you follow. What he's saying. The Gemara says that Inui, the affliction here that we're talking about, is similar to not doing malacha. That it says you find the concept someplace else in the Torah. In the Torah, the whole Torah, Kol Torah Kula, 613, you find the concept of malacha. Yes, you find by Shabbos you're not allowed to do malacha. So when the Torah says Yom Kippur don't do malacha, we found it already. Also, when the Torah says afflict yourself, it's going to be an affliction, something which you find someplace else in the 613. There's something, a concept of afflict. Now, do you find any affliction in the Torah? No. But the Gemara is going to say you do find the concept of not eating, that you're not allowed to eat certain things.
You eat blood.
You can't eat blood, you can't eat pickle, you can't eat no certain things you're not allowed to eat. So we're going to say that's what the Ino is. The Ino is the same place it says someplace else don't eat, here also don't eat. But that's not enough because that would have only meant that you're not allowed to eat the things that you're not allowed to eat, like blood, pickle, no sir. How do you know that you're not allowed to eat things? Maybe there's an extra Isser on Yom Kippur to eat all of these Isurim that you're not allowed to eat the whole year round, maybe especially not allowed to eat it on Yom Kippur. Afflict yourselves with like 2 Isurim on the same thing. The Gemara sounds like a drash, of course, but the Gemara is going to say in many, many stages that we're going to have a drasha to say that you're not allowed to eat something which is a kares to eat. You're not allowed to even eat something which is only bisa b'dei shamayim to eat. You're even not allowed to eat something which is going to be a lav to eat, only a lav. Even not allowed to eat something which is mutter to eat usually, which now we're getting down to the fasting already, that you're not allowed to eat anything, even if it's mutter usually to eat. Then the Gemara is going to go further. You even need a pasuk that you're not allowed to eat something which is usually a mitzvah to eat, like truma. And you could be not allowed to eat that either. And then there's going to be a final thing. You're not allowed to even eat something which usually mechuyev to eat, which is going to be like kavan, it's kachim. You have to eat kachim. And here, there's going to be a mitzvah, which you're not allowed to eat. So,
Or matzah. Matzah would be something you're mechuyev to eat.
yes, good also, right? But matzah is only going to be on Pesach, and Pesach on Yom Kippur is not going to, it's not going to be a mitzvah.
Oh, I see.
You have to
I
get a
see.
mitzvah on Yom
Wouldn't be-
Kippur. So that wouldn't.
I see.
That's what the Gemara is going to do. The Gemara is going to say that there's going to be a riboy tanos nafshes sechem to say that you're not allowed to eat something which is never allowed to eat on a kares level, misa b'dei shamayim level, a lav level, a negative commandment, and then a mutter level, and then a mitzvah level, and then a chiyuv level. And you're not allowed to eat all these things on Yom Kippur. But the point that the Gemara is all backed up on is that it has to be something which you find someplace else in the Torah, which means that sometimes you find you're not allowed to eat. That's how the Gemara starts. Just like malach is
Sir,
something.
what is the example of the chiyuv level?
We're going to get to kachim, karbanos. I just made a preview. The Gemara is going
Oh,
to.
yeah, kachim.
So the Gemara says, for you learn from malacha, since it says malacha next to Inui, so we're going to learn out something which is similar. What's that? That is something which you have the concept someplace else in the Torah. Just like malacha you find by Shabbos, also Yom Kippur. So to Inui, something which you find someplace else. What's that? What is that? It's the pigul v'noso. Chaim David said blood is also good. Any kind of issue which is a chiyuv kares. But the Gemara says, okay, maybe only a chiyuv kares. Avi pigul v'noso shein b'kares. V'lo avi yasa tevel shein b'kares. Maybe you're only not allowed to eat pigul on Yom Kippur. But if it's only a misik b'dei shemayim like tevel, maybe you would be allowed to eat on Yom Kippur. Of course, you're not allowed to eat it because it's tevel, but you wouldn't have an extra issue of Yom Kippur. It says a lot of times the word tanu, and these words it says many times to say even more. That even misa b'dei shemayim. Okay, avi tevel shu b'misa, v'lo avi as an nevela sheina b'misa, but maybe only something which is misa b'dei shemayim, but something which is less like nevela. It's only a losa, say a negative commandment. Maybe over there you're not going to be a specialist on Yom Kippur. That it says more times that's also usher. Okay, obvious on nevela shu b'lav, v'lo obvious achulun sheina b'lav. Maybe only something which is usher to eat at least a lav, then on Yom Kippur it's going to be a kares if a person doesn't afflict himself from that. But maybe something which usually chulin you're allowed to eat, maybe there's no issur to eat it on Yom Kippur. Again, there's a ribo, even that also. Okay, maybe only chulin. It's not a mitzvah to eat it. You'll mutter, but it's not a mitzvah. But truma, which is a mitzvah to eat, maybe over there you're allowed to eat it on Yom Kippur. It comes to say more times this pasuk of Tanu. Okay, maybe only truma. Obvious that truma there's no avera not to eat it. That kachim it says don't leave it over, eat it. Don't leave it over till tomorrow. So it's a losa say not to eat it. So maybe that you're allowed to eat on Yom Kippur. That it says many times, maybe it says 5 times this word ta'anu to tell you that all these things are awesome. So this drasha started off that has to be similar to malacha, which you find the concept someplace else in the Torah. And eating, you find the concept of issur of eating sometimes in the Torah, like people nosa, and it goes on to be more and more ribuyim that you're not allowed to eat anything. So the Gemara at this point is happy that you're not that the inu is going to be eating. 3 lines before it spreads. Vim nafshach lomar. If you have some kind of kasha, if you have what to say, the Gemara doesn't, the Brisa doesn't say what you might say. You might have a kasha to disprove this whole drash, and the Brisa doesn't even tell you what it is. We'll see soon what it is. So, the pasuk talks about ibud nefesh, which means the pasuk pashtus means that Hashem says, "I'm going to destroy your nefesh." I'm like Kores. Inu she avedus nefesh. It has to be a kind of affliction which is fatal. So, veza is achila. Which kind of affliction is fatal? You might say that staying too cold and hot is also fatal, but we'll get to that in a second. But eating and drinking, if a person is going to continue afflicting himself without eating and drinking, eventually it's going to be fatal. So that's going to be a drasha to say that we're talking about the affliction, which is eating and drinking. That's the end of the brisa. All this started from Tanya Idach, all this one big brisa. Where did we go here? Tanya Idach started over here, Tanya Idach, and it goes down until over here, the first wide line, the word shtia, until there's the end of the brisa. Now the Gemara wants to know, what was that kasha? 2 lines ago he said, if you have some kasha, what's that kasha that you have? What's that kasha that you have? The kasha is I can find something else which fits the description. You said that has to be something which you find the concept someplace else. I find another affliction which is a concept someplace else in the Torah, relations. Maybe the person's talking about maybe that's going to be what's going to be a chorus, that if someone's going to have relations, because relations is similar to food. Just like food, you find the concept of something which is usher in the Torah to eat. Like we said, pigol v'nosar, there's also relations that are usher. There's a chorus level, there's a misa b'dei level, there's a lav level, there's a mutter level, there's a mitzvah level. So we could say that Tanas Nafsh Sechem is coming to say that a person should not have relations, and it's going to be chayiv chorus. We know that it's not chayiv chorus. It's only maybe it's also the Raisa, maybe it's only Rabbanan, the other 4 inuyim are not chayiv chorus. And the Gemara is saying that you might challenge this drasha and say that it doesn't mean eating, maybe it means tash, maybe it means both, but maybe it includes tashmish also, and that the Brisa ends off. That the affliction of holding back from relations, even though it's an affliction, but it's not fatal. A person can go on forever without having relations, it's not fatal. But eating, if he goes on a couple of days, it's gonna die. So that's the drasha to say that it has to be an affliction which is fatal.
Oh, wow.
Not that he has to be fatal on Yom Kippur. It's not fatal to have one day, but the affliction
that's
of eating.
One of the reasons why it's not chorus. It's chayit chorus. Tashmish meat is not chayit chorus. That's only eating.
And a kind of an affliction which eventually would have been fatal. So we finished the drash. We have 2 drashas. The first drasha was similar to Malacha, that it's universal passive. That was the first drasha. Second drasha says that it's something else that you find the concept in the Torah someplace else, and also that it's fatal. Put it together with the end of the brisa, and therefore it comes out to be achila and shtia, but not about arise, because it's not something which is fatal. Third white line, the Gemara is the third drasha. To find out that ina means not to eat. Why? That's talking about the pasuk by the man. It says that in the midboard in the desert they didn't have what to eat. Hashem afflicted you and made you hungry and gave you the man. Means the man was the solution for the hunger that they had. Over there it says the hunger was the ina, not the man. The man was good. That was the food. That was the solution. But maybe the drash is going to say that even the man is also considered inu. Maybe that's the drash level. But as far as we're concerned, that means that not eating is considered inu. Here's a pasuk. By the man, it says that Hashem afflicted you and made you hungry. And here it says you should be ma'aneh. Tanus nafshes seichem. So it means to be hungry. The Mars Akasha, you find that holding back from relations is also called inu. Laban said to Yaakov that he made him swear that he's not going to afflict his daughters. Means he was like the big tzaddik at the end, Laban, and he says, take care of my daughter. Yeah, over there it means, over there you see the word inu, the more saying inu means that you should not hold back relations from my daughters. He's talking to Yaakov, like he's the greatest tzaddik that's telling take care of my daughters. But anyway, over there it says a word of inui, and it means relations. So maybe that's if you only want Gzera Shava. We're not doing the other drashas now, we said before. Now it's going to be the drash alone, Gzera Shava. So maybe make Gzera Shava to that pasuk over there. Inui means holding back from relations. The answer is done on inu the rabbim, inu the rabbim, inu the rabbim, inu the yachid. It has to be something which is on a national level. Over there, it's only an individual. Laban told Yaakov with his daughters. So over there, I don't see that the word inu is used on a national level. So therefore, rather than out from the man, that was the whole nation was hungry. The name of inu the Mitzrayim. No, you do find that the holding back from relations is even on a national level. By Mitzrayim, it says Over there it says the Inui, Hashem saw affliction. Which affliction? That they were separated from relations with their wives. So you see that even on a national level, it's called Inui, the fact that they hold back from relations. So maybe that's what the pasuk means. That you should not have relations on Yom Kippur. Over there, Parah was the one who made this gzera. As a human being, he made the gzera. He made the Inui. We want to find the Inui which Hashem said. So by the man. Over there, the midbar, Hashem brought them into the midbar. Hashem is the one who orchestrated they shouldn't have food. That's called B'dei Shemayim. And also here, that Hashem is saying on Yom Kippur, you should be maneh. So something in the word of Hashem. So the Gzera Shava is more similar to the Inui of not eating than to the Inui of relations. And therefore, we come out with these three drushes. We had already three drushes. That's the summary of today. That this second daf over here, we'll go back to the first daf, to the first Amud also. But here, the whole summary of the second daf, how do you know Inui? Affliction on Yom Kippur means not eat and drink. One that Russia is because it has to be similar to Malacha, universal, passive. Maybe that also would have included. This has to go. You need under the brass also. That be there is something which you find the concept in the Torah someplace else, which is going to be the issue of eating. And at the end, the Brisa says that it's something which has to be eventually fatal. And the third Brisa over here said the drasha of Gzera Shava to Vayancha Vayarivecha, that over there you see that Ino is called not eating. And even though you find, again, the Ino someplace else, you have to find something Ino B'dei Shemayim, the way that Hashem orchestrated an Ino. That was the whole second daf, and that's coming to clarify how do you know that the Ino is not to eat. The first daf we had about one kasha was only one kasha over there. How come the Mishnah says Asr to eat and drink, it's really high chorus? So the Moayan said because Chasi Shir. Two truths. The first says what's Chasi Shir, that it's not chorus. Either it's also the rice of Rabbanim, Machloek Zebech and Shlokish. By the way, we pass like a Yochanan that Chasi Shir also in the Torah, that you're not allowed to eat on the Torah. Maybe it's Chayv Malkus, I don't know, but you're not allowed to eat less than a shir even on the rice level. And therefore the pasuk says the Mishnah says Asr. Even when it's not chorus, it's still Asr. The second test was Asr is going on the rest of the Inui, the other four, that's not Chayv. Chorus is still Asr. And after that, the Gemara opened up the subject about Chatzi Shavasim in the Torah, where Yochanan says Chazi is Terufe, and also it's a pasuk that Kol Chaylev. Kol Chaylev comes to tell you that it's even the Raisa, it's not Chayv Chorus. Okay, Yeshikach everybody. Thank you.
Which was the first drush? I got the second and third. Arias and
the Bryce starts to begin Tan Rabbanan, then is a Tanya Idach, and then is a Tan Dver Bishmol. We'll be back in 1 minute. Yashikov, thank you.
like now, everything is black and white.
Okay. Shalom again. Welcome everybody. And we're in Hilchos Muktzah. And just as a warning, if my machine goes down, so it'll take a minute till I get up again from a different device. So I hope that won't happen, but not to be startled. We're talking about buses. And I hope that it was clear till now everything that we did. If we could continue. Oh, we had last time we spoke about Tafel, the kinds of short pockets we spoke about on page 156, 157, 158. All that was about. We also talked about the drawers, in which he spoke that sometimes the top of the table is the table itself is serving whatever's on top of it, and also the drawer that's hanging onto it. And if something is more chashuv on the table will be mutter, even though the drawer might be usher. And sometimes the heter that might be in the drawer is not going to be enough to make the table mutter. If you have something usher on the table and something mutter in the drawer, thank you so much. So the drawer will be mutter, but it could be that the table is not so much servicing that heter. That was a footnote that he said. We also spoke about an example about a stender that has a drawer inside. The top of the stender is the main, like whatever the comparison was, the drawer on the table. So also the top of the stender and the drawer that's inside. Same idea that the heter on top the stender is surely serving that, even though there's this inside, you'd be allowed to move the whole stender. The last examples we talked about last time were the beam of the Beis HaKnesses. If the Gabbai intentionally, for some reason, would have left the stucco box, so then the bima might become buses. Even though there are things inside the bottom of the bima, there's doors over there, some kind of compartment, but the top of the bima might be us, even though there's heter in the bima might be us, even though the heter is inside the drawer. He talks about here about a briefcase, a child's briefcase, and again, it goes with the regular halachas about chashivos. If you have something which is more, the heter is more chashiv than the isser, then the briefcase is not usher. If the isser is more chashiv, so then the whole briefcase is usher. Even when it's mutter, try to shake out the heter if possible. If not, then you'd be allowed to move the whole thing. And the next thing he spoke about was what we call a binder, a loose leaf that has pages in it. That might be the written pages are not muktzah, and the blank pages might be considered muktzah. Do you consider that buses? So of course, if the heter is more chashiv than the blank pages, then surely it will be mutter. Some say that you look at the whole thing as one. You don't consider it like you don't look at the blank pages as muktzah by themselves. You look at it as one machberet, one binder. The lesson we had most interesting last time was a key ring, which Abelazar brought up the case, and he has the case over here. If you have a key ring which has mutter keys and usher keys, a mutter key would be like a house key, right, and an usher key would be like a car key, the ignition key, or other kinds of muktzah kind of things on the key ring. So if the heter ring is more chashuv, if we go according to what his rule of the thumb was, if you'd have to lose one of them, which one would you rather lose? That's the non-significant one. So it depends. Sometimes the key of the house is a simple key, and the key of the car might be a very fancy key, and it's hard to replace. So if you have to lose one of them, you might want to lose the house key. If
you're looking at the key itself, or the property that the key is in.
I think that after everything's over, the key.
To be saying the key itself.
I think so. Yeah.
I'm thinking always, is it the car? The broken down.
What's it? I think,
or a house which is full of valuable things. You saying no? You saying
I think that if the key, I think I'm right. I say differently. Right. I think that if you'd have to lose the key, it's true. The house is much more valuable to you than you're saying.
Especially on Shabbos, I don't
think you go with Shabbos. I don't think you go with Shabbos. You go with which one is more valuable. Which one is more valuable. So I think that's how he told us before. Yeah, so valuable doesn't mean in money, but it means which one would you, if you'd have to lose one of them, which one would you lose? So if one of them was hard to replace, he gave the example of eyeglasses. That is very precious to me, even though it's not as expensive as something else. But eyeglasses, till I get a new pair of eyeglasses, it's a whole headache. So I'd rather lose something else than the eyeglasses. Sometimes if it's going to be whatever, $1,000 in the eyeglasses, so I'll get a new pair of eyeglasses, whatever it might be. But the criteria is the way he quotes from Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. If you'd have to lose one of them, which one would you rather lose? That's called less significant. So to the keys, I think that it goes with the keys. What's the difference? What is opening? Which one of them is more precious to me than if I have to lose one of them? So if that's true, so if the heter key is more valuable to you, so then fine. Then the whole thing is not muktzah. The key, you're not allowed to touch you're not allowed to hold on to the usher key. muktzah key, but you can hold on to the heter key or to the key ring, because the key ring is not a basis only for Isser, it's a basis for Isser and heter, and the heter is more chashuv. If the muktzah key is more chashuv, so then the key
So then
ring,
the whole key ring becomes a
the
bus.
key ring becomes a basis.
Yeah.
But he points out very nicely, not the whole thing, the key ring, the Aser key and the key ring, because the key ring is the basis, it's holding on to the Aser key, which is more chashuv. But the heter key still doesn't become Aser. You'd be allowed to touch, if you don't touch the key ring, don't hold on to the ring, hold on to the heter key. Even though everything else goes along with it, that's already tiltum and atzad. I'm interested in the house key, so I'm allowed to take the house key, even though the key ring and the Isser key is coming along. I thought it was very nice analysis of the subject. I'll just repeat it one more time. Benjamin, 1 second, please. That if you have a key ring which has a Isser key, a key of a car, an ignition key, and a house key, so and the ignition key is more valuable to you, that's the one which is more significant. So the ignition key surely is muktzah. The key ring is also muktzah because it's serving the Isser, which is more chashuv than the heter. But the house key doesn't become Isser. That's not a basis. The house key is not serving the ignition key. It's not serving. It doesn't help it. It's not a ring. So the ring is a basis which is mutter. The key ring is not a basis at all. The house key is not a basis at all. So it's mutter. You have to be allowed to pick up the house key and just hold on to that, even though everything else is coming along with it. Yes, Benjamin.
I just was trying to understand that last point. I was just trying to think it through and some of the examples we've learned. But this point that you're making, it seems like a little bit of a chiddush that you can lift up the permissible key and carry the key ring with it. Again, I'm not saying yes or no. I'm just thinking of the lumdus of it. I mean, we haven't really talked about that. We've been talking about tables and everything else. So, and we obviously they're not connected. So we can't lift up the permissible thing and lift the table and move it over.
But this takes us back to the beginning of the muktzah book, because the basis is not going to become more severe than the muktzah itself. And we had the concept of moving muktzah itself, that you're allowed to move the mutter even though the heter moves along by itself. That was the issue called tiltum and atzad, that you're moving it indirectly. I'm moving the mutter and the Isser, the muktzah gets moved along indirectly. So he said that as long as your intention is for the mutter, that's mutter. That's what's permissible. So it's true. We didn't talk about it by the basis case, but the basis is not going to be more severe than the muktzah itself.
I hear you. Give me an example. Was that the case where we talked about someone sticking some type of a rod in between things to grab something? What would you in that sugya when we were first learning it? Can you refresh my memory on those cases?
That you had a fig. I think one case was a fig, and you took like a knitting needle and thrust it in, and the fig is inside straw, muktzah straw, whatever you want to give examples. And when you pick up the fig, it's going to move the straw away. So I'm just interested in the fig, and the muktzah straw is going to get pushed away by itself. And I'm not interested in that indirectly, so you're allowed to do that. Or a case was you have upside down turnip or something like that, buried in the ground, and you want to pick it up, and the ground is going to get moved away. You'd be allowed to do that also. That's all called tiltum and atzad, l'tzarech davar mutter. That's indirect movement of muktzah for the purpose of the mutter, not for the purpose of the muktzah. Means if you want to move muktzah indirectly for the purpose of the muktzah's sake, then you're not allowed to. But I'm allowed to move the mutter even though the muktzah gets pushed away. So
and in the case you said a moment ago, when you first started talking, you mentioned about a briefcase, and there the briefcase was a basis, I assume, and you had mutter and heter, and you said that you mentioned briefly that you could shake out the impermissible and somehow then move the briefcase. So
even when something is not a basis, and you're allowed to move it indirectly, we have the case also, other cases coming up that coming up in my mind, that you had a barrel that had a rock on top of it, and you wanted to get to the wine in the barrel, so you could tip off the muktzah, pick up the barrel, take up the muktzah, because it's indirect muktzah, not for the purpose of the stone, but for the wine. So again, that's not a basis over there, and it's indirect movement for the purpose of the mutter. It's mutter. But over there it says, even if you it's not a buses, but first try to tilt it off if you could. If you can't, you can. So here, if you have a big briefcase, if the whole briefcase is a buses, so then the whole thing, everything you can't move, you can't open up the briefcase. Everything is usher. But if the briefcase is not a buses because the mutter items inside are more significant than the muktzah items, so then the briefcase is not buses. You'd be allowed to open it up. As far as moving it around, if it's possible to shake out the muktzah before you would take the whole briefcase, we tell them to do it. If you can't, you can't. The case of the rekeying, it doesn't. What's that?
Isser and Heter are both in the briefcase.
Yes, and that is more significant. And it's not a buses, but even though it's not a buses, you're supposed to shake it out, shake out the muktzah. If you could, you could. If you can't, you can't. And here, by the keyring, it doesn't apply because you can't shake off the Isser keyrings and the keyring from the side. If it shakes off, it's not a good keyring. Everything is very connected. If the keys shake off, so then get a new keyring. That's not a. So there's no option of shaking it off. And whenever there's something which is not a buses and it's mutter, but still you say that lachatchila try to get rid of the muktzah if you could by shaking it off. But if you can't,
so
you
that
can't.
you don't touch it when you're taking out
Not
the
because of
heter.
touching. Not because of
What's
touching.
the reason? Oh, because you don't want to carry it.
Even indirectly, we try not to move indirectly if not necessary.
Amen.
But your hesper that you said you could pick up the thing that is mutar.
Yes,
Maybe everything schleps along.
yes.
Fine, and you're touching your own head. Does that mean you could put picking up the mutar keyring? You could put it in your pocket, walk to shul.
I think so. How you, Belez is asking that if you put it into your pocket, can you take the key ring, holding on to the house key and putting it into your pocket, and you're going to go in a place where there's an area?
Sometimes you have a Isser in your pocket.
We're not talking about this. We're talking about the heter over here. You're allowed to take the key ring. So, but the question is going to be when you want to get the
When you want to take it out.
how you going to know you're going to touching on the house key? You just put your hand into your pocket. You don't know what you're touching.
Or maybe you could just maybe that case you have to just
You'll be able
schlep
to,
the material
until the
pull
keys
it
fall,
out,
and then you can have
empty
it.
it.
Okay, so if that's true, I didn't think about all this, but if you have this key ring that has Isser, and you have your your house key, and that's why you want to hold on to the house key, and everything slips along. You put it into your pocket, that's fine. But then to take it out, that's sticking your hand in. You're probably going to touch the muktzah. So Belaz is suggesting that hold on to the pocket in a way to pull out the pocket in a way the keys will fall to the floor.
Or reveal it without falling, and then
Okay.
you see your ring. and you
The
connect
mutter
the
ring, and then hold on to the mutter ring, and then you can pull everything else out.
But Rav, if you do recognize the difference between the keys, it just for clarity, you would be able to touch that muktzah to be able to feel it without moving it. If you're just feeling it to see which key you're grabbing, that would be permissible, right? We don't have a prohibition of touching muktzah.
But I think if you have the keys in your pocket and you touch, I think you'll be moving. You'll be moving. It won't be just be touching a stationary thing. It's going to be moving. It'll be moving slightly in your pocket, but that's called moving. And you want to feel it around. Theoretically, you're right that if you just touch it and don't move it, there's no issue to touch muktzah. But here, definitely you'll be moving it. Okay. If that's all good, I hope everybody's enjoying all these buses. We go further. Page Kuf Samach Gimel, 163. If we don't know all the answers, at least we know the questions. Enough to ask the questions. Educated the questions at least.
Okay, sorry, I want to get this right. Titul min atzad,
Litzorach davar mutter.
litzorach davar min atzad. And the titul atzad is because there's muktzah there.
Tiltum al atzad means indirect movement of muktzah. Tiltum al atzad means indirect movement of muktzah. Is mutter if you're doing it for the sake of the heter.
To leave what's left behind.
I'm not following your
And
words.
to move away something which is muktzah, so that you have access to what's head.
No. Your case is that moving. How are you moving away the muktzah? By hand? That's not called indirect. That's called moving the muktzah. That's called tzorach makomo. Sometimes you're allowed to move it. You're allowed to take a hammer and hold on to it and pick it up and take it off the bed because I want to go to sleep. I see we're still recording over here. We'll stop that 1 second, please.